What up, boxing fans? So June is filled to the brim with boxing. As with this weekend, we got fights Friday night and Saturday night. The PBC on Spike returns, as well as two HBO, one HBO doubleheader and another Showtime card. But before I talk about those fights briefly, I wanted to really just use this platform. Obviously, you guys see behind me, a lot of you know I'm a music producer as well. And I wanted to just really pay respects to two people that we lost yesterday and today. First, for those of you who are who have been into the underground hip hop scene, particularly in the late '90s, early 2000s, and if you're into the battle scene, you would have heard the name Pumpkinhead or PH. And unfortunately, he lost his life yesterday at the age of 39. And very sad, man. I mean, anytime I hear somebody in life, man, it's very tragic. He left behind two kids and a wife. I know a lot of people that directly knew him, and everybody was just really distraught. And you can only imagine, man. I mean, this guy was very instrumental in the New York City movement of the indie hip hop movement. As he was in the group by the name of Brooklyn Academy, that was a big underground group in the late '90s out of New York City. So condolences to PH, aka Pumpkinhead. Condolences to his family, as well as what we heard today, man. This really struck a chord with me as well, man. A lot of you know I'm a big pro wrestling fan, and we lost probably one of the biggest names to ever come out of professional wrestling, and that is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, as he lost his life today at the age of 69. I'm pretty sure they're going to do a whole tribute show to him on Monday. The guy, I'm very much into like the inner workings of wrestling as far as, the writers and how the product is made and so forth. And it is, if you look up Dusty Rhodes, beyond just being one of the biggest names professionally, or just one of the biggest names in the history of professional wrestling, he's been very instrumental into some of the newer guys and even the generation prior, as far as just kind of giving them that push or leading them in the right path. Very unfortunate, man. Rest in peace to the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, the son of a plumber. So now we got that out of the way. On a lighter note, we have boxing again Friday and Saturday night. I'm going to start real quick with the PBC on Spike that's going to be taking place Friday. And the undercard is going to be featuring Artur Beterbiev. And if you guys haven't got wind of this guy, look him up. He is actually officially signed to Al Heyman now, as we got word earlier this week. And he is another hard-hitting Russian, man, and a very skilled guy. Only has like 8 or 9 fights. He's going to be on the undercard. I forgot. I want to say against is it Andre Johnson? I believe. Don't quote me, but this guy, from the moment I laid eyes on him, man, keep an eye on Beterbiev. Let me just say, I mean, the guy hits like a tank. Very good pressure fighter, and obviously got to see him in there with some bigger names. But he's a guy that is has had a big amateur career and is now, I guess, in the later stages. Now it's coming into being a pro. But so far, so good. But he is an Al Heyman fighter, so get used to seeing him on upcoming PBC cards. And the main event is featuring Erislandy Lara and Delvin Rodriguez. You're going to have Cuba against the Dominican Republic, which is a rarity in boxing, as we, the last real big Dominican was Joan Guzman, and, unfortunately his career kind of like took a somewhat of a downward spiral. But Erislandy Lara, man, in the last few weeks has been making headlines in the sport, calling out Triple G, and he's saying, basically, I'm available. Why doesn't he fight me? This guy hasn't fought anybody, which is really the sentiment of a lot of people who I guess are a little critical of Golovkin. Only problem with that situation is the fact that, number one, Erislandy Lara is signed to Al Heyman, and Al Heyman doesn't seem as if he's in any rush or is going to go out of his way to work with HBO. They try to set up the Kovalev versus Stevenson fight. I don't want to get too much into detail. You can, use Google, research yourself. But there's obviously a Cold War that ended between Golden Boy and Top Rank and partially HBO. And another one has really begun with Golden Boy, Top Rank / Al Heyman and so forth. And, I think this is one of the unfortunate unfortunate things when it comes to the sport itself, where, you still, like I said, Golden Boy and Top Rank patched their, they patched their beef up. But now you have Al Heyman, who really has a good amount of the top fighters under his stable. And just like what Top Rank and what Golden Boy, really mainly those two have done, is really delegate their fights to one network. Top Rank, for the better part of 5 years, has been solely on HBO, as it with Golden Boy, at least for the last couple years, had been delegated to just Showtime. So with Al Heyman now, he has 90% of the top, with the exception of Fox, has all the top cable not cable networks, but the main, TV networks, NBC, CBS, ABC / ESPN. So for him, I don't think there's an immediate rush for him to co-promote with another cable network as this is, because when you look at guys like Canelo, Golovkin, and Sergey Kovalev, all those guys are contractually binded to HBO. They cannot fight anywhere, or let me say, they cannot be televised anywhere else in the United States but HBO. Overseas, it might be a little different story, but I think HBO, as far as Golovkin's concerned, they're on board with him wherever he goes. I mean, I think he can fight on an island in Tahiti with like 18, 19 people, and they're probably going to televise it. So the reality is, Erislandy Lara, to me, his options are fights, depending obviously what comes out of the fight with Delvin Rodriguez, which I expect him to win pretty decisively. I think his choices really are Demetrius Andrade or one of the Charlo brothers. And I forgot who's fighting Canine Bundridge. I think it's Jamel. That's a fight right there. I mean, you got a title fight right there, and Demetrius Andrade is another fight. These guys are calling out Lara too, and for Lara, I think, I understand his plight. I mean, he wants another big fight, and considering that the Canelo Alvarez fight, even right to this day, is still a highly disputed outcome, as far as, some people, a good amount of people, I should say, believe Lara beat Canelo, by a slight margin. But I don't know, man. I think with Lara, I think he just has to get past this fight, and I think his choices are Charlo, with one of the Charlo brothers, mainly Jamel, or Demetrius Andrade. So we'll have to wait and see how that turns out after Friday night. Now, leading into Saturday, we have a doubleheader on HBO, which when I first looked at it, I really didn't pay too much mind. But then when I looked at the records of these guys, particularly the opponents of both Nicholas Walters and Felix Verdejo, they're both fighting undefeated fighters, and particularly with Nicholas Walters, Marriaga, I should say, to roll the R's. He's got a 90% knockout ratio. He's 20-0 with 18 knockouts. Now, granted, the knockouts, or I should say the list of guys that he's knocked out, aren't top level / elite, but you still have to be wary of a guy who has that type of knockout ratio. And with Nicholas Walters, another guy, undefeated, high knockout ratio, and this might make for a more interesting fight than even I believe to be, as I was we were talking on last Monday's GYGB show about you know, really the outcome of the fight and what it could lead to. But, you know, we've seen so many times, man, and it's certain guys that become the apple spoiler because as what Bob Arum is talking about, and I read today, Bob Arum is setting up a huge pay-per-view in November that is going to be headlined by the a Nicholas Walters versus Vasily Lomachenko fight, which I mean, when you talk about the two top featherweights in the world, that's them. And I'm also hearing that on the undercard would be the winner of Timothy Bradley versus Jesse Vargas against Saddam Ali for what I think is the WBO, the vacant WBO title. Now, there's a separate story to that concerning Floyd Mayweather, which you can research yourself, as far as Floyd maybe not giving up all the belts right away. And if you want to draw conclusions as far as maybe who his next opponent will be, you know, try to, you know, put those pieces together and see if you can figure out who his opponent might be. But in any case, that's another video. But apparently Bob Arum is trying to set up a big card in I want to say in overseas. Oh man, I can't think of where you where in the Arab Emirates. Why I cannot think of off the top of my head where in Bali, I believe. In Bali is where they want to have the fight, and he's been talking about this for years, man. But I think maybe he does go about it, considering the fact that, you know, really now, man, you know, both Arum and Golden Boy have to compete with PBC in some fashion. And if they put that card together, especially those two fights, I'm sold. I'd love to see both of those fights. Obviously, depending the winner of Vargas and Bradley, how that turns out, is, you know, in the fight against Saddam Ali. So I have Nicholas Walters winning the fight. I mean, I've just seen enough of him and seen that this guy, I mean, he's a big featherweight, man, and he can crack. Not the most efficient defensive fighter, but it's kind of a deal, man, where you got to get past his power. And again, we'll see if Marriaga's power translates to elite level competition, as you know, we'll see Saturday night. On the undercard is going to be Felix Verdejo against, I can't pronounce his first name, Nahara. Another guy, undefeated, not the biggest knockout ratio, but you know, Felix Verdejo seems as if it is the next heir apparent in the long line of Puerto Ricans to, you know, be, you know, that end up becoming superstars. You know, obviously Miguel Cotto is this generation's Puerto Rican representative, as was Tito before him. And the way it looks right now, Verdejo looks like he could be that guy. And based on what I've seen from him, man, I mean, I think we just need to see him in tougher fights to really get a full gauge as to where he's going to go. But, I mean, as far as the skill set is concerned, I mean, there's a lot to praise about the kid. And, you know, I think the fact that he's getting his first HBO opportunity on the undercard of the Nicholas Walters Marriaga fight, you know, it's situations like this where I've seen fighters from the past, such as Miguel Cotto, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather. You know, some of the big names have been at this position where they fought undercards of pay-per-views, undercards of HBO cards. And, you know, 5-6 years later, I mean, we're talking a different story about these guys, or we're talking about them being world champions or pound-for-pound elites. And I think this, for the better part of this year and going into next year, I think guys like Verdejo and Errol Spence are going to really show their colors as to how they're going to excel into the future, as far as if they're going to be top stars or not. So that's, I mean, I got Verdejo and I got Nicholas Walters winning both fights. And then last but not least, Showtime card featuring Deontay Wilder defending his WBC title against Eric Molina. Now, I'm surprised that they didn't put this fight on one of the PBC cards. Because as I stated, once the PBC started and once Deontay Wilder beat Stiverne for the title, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to put a heavyweight, mind you, the WBC champion, on network television. I mean, if you want to gauge the general public and get those fans who are really starving for an American heavyweight, I'm not sure why they didn't try to make this like either a CBS or NBC type of card, you know, because the thing with the HBO card, man, I mean, the HBO card is just a better card, you know. So if you're trying to garner some attention for this guy, especially considering you know, there is a collision course, so to speak, with him and whether it's Tyson Fury or Vladimir Klitschko. I mean, I think that's the fight between those two that most boxing fans would want to see. And I think for the sake of the general public who haven't seen a big heavyweight fight, you know, if Klitschko beats Tyson Fury, if, you know, they get that fight situated for September and sometime next year, Deontay and Klitschko becomes the big fight, I mean, that's probably the biggest heavyweight fight in years. But I think for Deontay Wilder, man, they got to get him on a bigger platform. And that's not to shit on Showtime, but, I mean, just HBO is the bigger network, man. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. But I think with Deontay Wilder, I mean, he's fighting Eric Molina, who I've watched a bit of, and this is a stay busy fight for him, and it's a fight I think he'll look good in. But I think the fight he should have after this is against Povetkin, and I think that might pose as his toughest challenge to date. And I think that fight, man, would be, again, that's another situation, man, where that's a easy PBC date that they could put on NBC prime time, man. They really need to strike while the iron is hot with Deontay Wilder, and you know, again, like I don't know why they even put this fight on Showtime, and even considering that HBO has a card on the same night, that's just an overall better card, and this is like the second time in a row that this has happened. Being the last one was the Matisse and Provodnikov fight, you know, which was against partially against the Chavez Fonfara fight. Didn't end well for Chavez. So again, man, a lot of boxing this weekend, a lot of boxing really this month, man. We got boxing. There's three fights next week between you know, obviously the BET card with Andre Ward and Paul Smith. We have David Lemieux against Adam, and then the main PBC card, the Adrian Broner and Sean Porter fight, which is the fight I'm watching first, or the fight I'm not DVRing. But that'll be next week. But this weekend, Friday, PBC on Spike, Erislandy Lara versus Delvin Rodriguez with the undercard of Better B versus Johnson. And then the Saturday cards, HBO and Showtime. Doubleheader on HBO. And then Deontay Wilder, Eric Molina on Showtime. Let me know what you guys think of the fight. As I always say, tune in every Monday night, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. The Guard Your Grill Boxing Podcast with myself and the whole crew out of Philly. I'm the Miami representative. And we'll be talking about the outcome of these fights as well as the upcoming June 20th dates. So as I always say, subscribe, hit the links, and I will be back with you soon. Peace.